public hearing. Thank you for joining the Boston Zoning Commission public hearing, which is being held virtually to ensure the safety of public health, public staff members and the Boston Zoning Commissioners. The open meeting law requires that I notify the public that this virtual meeting is being recorded. Please be advised that an audio and video recording of the meeting is being made. At this time, we take a moment to introduce our translators for these this morning's meetings. Somebody wanna? How was that?
David, would you like to start?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. My name is David Molina, and I'm going to be the Spanish interpreter in this meeting. Le damos la bienvenida a todos los que están aquí para esta reunión, en esta primera reunión de la Comisión de Zonificación de la Ciudad de Boston. Tenemos aquí a todo el equipo de la Safe Public, Departamento de Seguridad Pública, y queremos informarle que esta reunión va a ser grabada tanto en audio como en video, así que por favor le pedimos que mientras esté ocurriendo la reunión, esté con su cámara apagada si es que no quiere ser grabado. A continuación vamos a dar algunas explicaciones con respecto a la interpretación, que posteriormente va a contar con canales de interpretación en la parte de abajo y usted va a poder seleccionar los canales de interpretación, el lenguaje que quiera escuchar, ya sea español, cantonés, mandarín, caboverdiano y los otros idiomas que van a estar disponibles, y usted va a poder escuchar la reunión en el idioma de preferencia. Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you,
Thank you,
David.
David. Can we go to Joan now?
Yeah, thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Joan. I'll be the Cantonese interpreter for this morning's meeting. 大家早晨，我係今日嘅廣東話翻譯員。一陣間主持人咧會開啟呢個翻譯嘅頻道。你就會喺呢個熒光幕下方咧就見到地球儀嘅標誌，見到個標誌點選落去選擇語言，然後揀廣東話 Cantonese 就可以聽到一陣間會議嘅即時傳譯。唔該晒大家 ，Thank you.
Thank you, Joan. Can we go to Horan now?
Yes, my name is Horan. I am the Mandarin interpreter for tonight's public meeting. 我的名字叫浩然，我是你们今天晚上的国语翻译。等一下那个屏幕上有这个小小的地球仪写着这个翻译英文写着 interpretation 点开地球仪之后呢，点过去国语 Mandarin 那个地方，你就可以听到我今天晚上会议上的翻译。Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you. Now to Jardine.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jardine, and I'll be your Haitian Creole interpreter for this morning's meeting. Bonjour tout le monde, moi c'est Jardine, et c'est moi qui vais interpréter pour nous en créole haïtien pour réunion matin qui basée sur une phase publique côté que vous pouvez porter toutes données que vous avez bail pendant le mois qui s'est passé, et puis pour commission zoning capable de voter sur vous. Merci.
Thank you, Jody.
Thank you. Now to Armando, and then we'll finish it up with New.
Good morning. My name is Armando Monteiro. I'm going to be the Cabo-Verdean Creole interpreter. Bom dia, meu nome é Armando Monteiro, minha servo intérprete de crioulo cabo-verdiano, país União. Para você acessar nos linguagem, língua crioulo cabo-verdiano, também na parte inferior do computador, tem lá a opção de buscar de língua. Então, bom dia para todo alguém e boa reunião. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Armando.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Như. I will be your Vietnamese interpreter for this morning's meeting. Xin chào mọi người, cảm ơn mọi người đã tham gia cuộc họp cho những cái ủy viên và cộng đồng vào sáng hôm nay. Thì sáng hôm nay chúng ta sẽ có lựa chọn dịch ra ngôn ngữ tiếng Việt, và tại vì chúng ta không có lựa chọn ngôn ngữ tiếng Việt thì quý vị vui lòng lựa chọn là ngôn ngữ Japanese là tiếng Nhật Bản thay cho tiếng Việt ạ. Và một lần nữa quý vị vui lòng chọn tiếng Nhật Bản thay cho tiếng Việt trong buổi ngày hôm nay, và xin lỗi vì cái sự cố này. Xin cảm ơn quý vị một lần nữa. Thank you.
Thank you, New.
The interpretation channels are now open.
Thank you. At this point, I'll take a roll call of zoning commissioners. Jill Hatton.
Present.
Michael Nichols,
Present.
Michael DeMella,
Present.
Nelson Arroyo, David Ma,
Present.
Drew Leff,
Present.
Aisha Miller,
Present.
Midori Morikawa,
Present.
Ricardo Ostrich,
Present.
Nelson Arroyo. I know Nelson's just been sent the new link. We'll get back to Nelson. Jay Hurley, I am present.
Nelson's on.
Nelson Arroyo, you there?
Yeah, I can see him. He hasn't answered, but he's there.
9 o'clock. This is a hearing before the Boston Zoning Commission to consider a petition for the approval of text amendment application number 519 and map amendment number 768 with respect to the Greater Mattapan Neighborhood District zoning. The hearing was duly advertised December 21st, 2023 in the Boston Herald. In the Boston Zoning Commission hearing on petitions, the proponent will first present their case and is subject to questioning by members of the commission only. We are taking support and opposition at the same time. If you're planning to testify, please take the time to verify that your computer microphone is active. Click the hand icon on your Zoom control panel. This will signal staff you would like to speak. When your hand is raised, your hand will be blue. If you're calling into the meeting and would like to testify, please dial *9 to raise your hand. When I call for public testimony, a member of the staff will announce your name and allow you to speak. You must unmute your microphone. Your webcam will not be active. Please give your full name, any group affiliation, and announce whether you support or oppose the petition. Each speaker will be allowed up to 2 minutes. If necessary, I will advise you when you have 30 seconds remaining. At that time, please summarize your remarks so the meeting can continue and others may be heard. Finally, the proponents are allowed a brief 5 to 10 minute period for rebuttal if they so desire. Before we begin the presentation, I believe we have a representative from the mayor's office. Jeff has asked me if she could do the scheduling conflict, if she could speak now about this hearing. Is that correct, Jeff?
That's correct. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sheila, if you want to unmute yourself. And
Sheila
offer your
Dillon.
testimony. Go ahead, Sheila. You should be all set.
Can see you, Sheila. Can't hear you.
I'm sorry. For some reason, I was getting, anyways, I was hearing the instructions in a different language. So my apologies. I don't know
Your
what I
fault.
did. So would you like me to go? Sorry, because I didn't understand. Okay, very good.
Yes,
All right. So
you're
you
on.
okay, thank you. Sorry for the confusion. I heard my name and okay.
That's all right.
Anyways, it is great to see you all and great to be here. I think this is a very exciting meeting. For the record, my name is Sheila Dillon and I'm Chief of Housing for the City of Boston and Director of the Department of Mayor's Office of Housing. And I am here to very much support the residential rezoning of Mattapan, but specifically to express my enthusiastic support for making accessory dwelling units as of right in Mattapan. And as all of you know, and you have been working very hard to address this issue, the cost of housing in Boston is unrelenting, and our residents continue to get displaced and need to leave this fine city. So we all are committed, and I know that the zoning commissioners are also committed to increasing supply, but doing it in a thoughtful way. So to use the accessory dwelling units, ADU units, to increase supply, I would give it the strategy an A++. ADUs, research has shown that ADU rents just naturally are less expensive because oftentimes the owners of the ADUs are renting to family members, cousins, mothers, fathers, adult children, or neighbors or people that they know. It also provides a way to increase supply in a more gentle way that neighborhoods are sometimes more accepting. It keeps families together, intergenerational families, and especially as our seniors, there's a lot of seniors right now in Boston that need housing, and this would certainly assist that. And it's also going to be an economic engine for our smaller contractors. We're starting to meet with them now, and they couldn't be more excited about this opportunity. I will say that the Mayor's Office of Housing wants to assist people that want to build ADUs. It's going to be easier for some homeowners than others. We're setting up monthly meetings, so open houses, so we can provide technical assistance. We provide financial assistance if the household qualifies. We're working with banks and mortgage companies to see what kind of equity and mortgage products they can come up with if people need to borrow. And I know that the BPDA is going to speak to some of the specifics here, but they're really working on pattern books and just ways that families can walk in and just have the process easier and know what to do upfront and more quickly. So we're just very, very excited about this. The West Coast is, I hate being shown up by the West Coast at any time, but they are, 1/3 of LA's building permits last year were ADUs. I mean, it could really be a supply generator. So Mattapan is the first out of the gate. We're hoping if this goes well, that we're looking at it statewide. So you can hear it in my voice. I am very, very enthusiastic about this housing type. And I'm just hoping that you support what's being presented today. Thank you so much for your time.
Hi, everybody. My name is Adriana Lasso-Harrier. I'm a planner at the BPDA. It's a pleasure to present to you today at the Zoning Commission. I'm joined here today by Adam Johnson, who is an urban designer on our team, as well as Marcy Osberg, a staff member at the Mayor's Office of Housing. And today, what we're presenting to you are amendments to Article 60, the Greater Mattapan Neighborhood Article. And by and large, these zoning amendments focus on modernizing Mattapan's residential zoning. But there are also some text amendments that update outdated text and streamline Article 60. And I'll be walking you all through that, a summary of that for you today. So as you heard, these proposed zoning changes are directly informed and shaped by the planning recommendations within Plan Mattapan, which is Mattapan's most recent neighborhood plan that focuses on planning and policy recommendations that can help Mattapan residents increase generational wealth, address historic inequities, and avoid displacement of current residents. Plan Mattapan was launched in October 2018, and over a 5-year time period, the planning team worked alongside the Mattapan community in developing the plan over a total of 150 plus engagement workshops. Plan Mattapan was approved and adopted by the BPDA board in May of 2023. Plan Mattapan contains an entire section devoted to planning and zoning recommendations that specifically focus on Mattapan's residential areas. And throughout the whole Plan Mattapan planning process, Mattapan residents were very clear that they feel very proud about their neighborhood because it's a place where families can find affordable homes, put down roots, and settle down for decades to come. But at the same time, Mattapan residents felt the impacts of Boston's citywide housing shortage, and they expressed the need for more affordable housing, especially the type that can support multi-generational living arrangements and that can support seniors, as well as more homeownership opportunities. And for this reason, the development of contextual and affordable housing became a central recommendation of the plan. Another of the major housing recommendations to come out of the plan was the proposal that accessory dwelling units should be made as of right to build in Mattapan. So accessory dwelling units, which are often abbreviated to ADUs, are additional units that can be built within an existing home or outside of it, such as in a smaller detached dwelling. As you can see from this slide, ADUs can come in all shapes and sizes, including as backyard cottages, attachments to the main home, or even converted sheds or garages. ADUs allow homeowners to utilize their property to its fullest potential and support a household as it grows and changes over the years. And an ADU can provide extra room for growing families. It can provide opportunities for extra income with an on-site rental unit, and it can increase equity on a property and help build up wealth for that household. So segueing now from Plan Mattapan and its planning recommendations for the residential areas of the neighborhood into how the planning team turned those recommendations into the new draft zoning that you see before you. I'm going to spend some time walking through our thought process, the goals behind the zoning changes, and some of the most important elements of the zoning. So once Plan Mattapan was approved by the BPDA board in May of 2023, the zoning team immediately began working on implementing the planning recommendations for Mattapan's residential areas into updated residential zoning. During the spring and the summer of this past year, we worked on the necessary zoning analysis and test fits, held community engagement, and participated on an interdepartmental working group with staff from the Mayor's Office of Housing, Inspectional Services, and the Fire Department, in order to ensure that the ADU zoning would functionally work with other regulatory measures that the city has in place for ADU development. This work continued into the fall as we worked to refine the draft zoning based on our analysis that we were doing, as well as stakeholder feedback. Over these past 6 months, there are some key engagement items I want to highlight for you all. Firstly, the zoning team held 3 public meetings with the Mattapan community. Once the draft zoning was released, it launched a public comment period throughout November. During that public comment period, we held 2 public zoning office hours for community members to come speak with us about the draft zoning. And we also held a briefing with local and state elected officials who represent Mattapan in November as well. The zoning changes that you see before you will create amendments to Article 60, which is Mattapan's neighborhood article. The whole zoning district that is governed by Article 60 is known as the Greater Mattapan Zoning District. And you can see that outlined in this maroon color here on the map. However, you'll notice that the Greater Mattapan Zoning District doesn't exactly match up with the neighborhood boundaries that we know, and it actually includes some parts of Dorchester. This is why Plan Mattapan had a specific study area, which the planning recommendations applied to. And this is the area that most Mattapan residents would identify as the Mattapan neighborhood extends. The planned study area is highlighted here in this blue color on the map. For the proposed zoning changes, we're solely focusing on the area that is both within the Greater Mattapan Zoning District and also within the Plan Mattapan study area. So that would be the area on the map shown with a polka dot overlay. It's only within this area that the new zoning subdistricts and dimensions for residential zoning will be applied. There are a few assorted text changes that are being made to update and standardize Article 60 itself, which I'll walk through at the end of this presentation. The major goal of these zoning amendments is to deliver a progressive and simplified residential zoning code for Mattapan. The text amendments to Mattapan's residential code will modernize the zoning code and align regulations with what is already built, and these changes can be organized into 3 categories. First, new residential zoning will support the existing character of the neighborhood via renovations to existing homes and development of new contextual housing on vacant lots. Secondly, new residential zoning will create an envelope that allows as-of-right construction of accessory dwelling units on residential lots in Mattapan. And thirdly, the assorted text updates to Article 60 will improve the function of the code. So let's walk through the zoning changes that will support renovations and new housing construction.
And good morning, everyone. Once again, my name is Adam, urban designer with the BPDA, who helped to work on the zoning for this project. And it's been very important to us that throughout the translation of all the planning goals you've heard Adriana talk about, that's an evidence-based process, that anything we're proposing is based on a careful analysis of the built form and character that Mattapan residents know and love today. And to greatly oversimplify that process, we collected existing conditions data, looking at built conditions, nonconformities with the existing zoning, and patterns of parcel sizes, to then assess how the existing zoning is working and to generate potential zoning dimensions to move forward with, which we then tested on nearly every parcel in the study area, looking in 3 broad buckets, whether infill parcels or vacant parcels would allow for buildable contextual structures, how nonconformity of existing structures could be reduced, and then how new zoning could minimize obstacles for the creation of ADUs on every lot. Next slide.
So as a refresher, here is Mattapan's existing zoning. For the residential portion of these text amendments, we'll just focus on the areas shown in yellow and purple on this map, which are currently zoned for single family, 2-family, 3-family, and multifamily residential use. The new zoning proposes simplifying the current single family, 2-family, and 3-family subdistricts into 2 new residential subdistricts, which we're calling residential 1 or R1 and residential 2 or R2. R1 is shown in the light yellow color and R2 is shown in a darker yellow color. There are also a couple multifamily residential subdistricts that will continue to be zoned as such, with a few new areas that are pointed to with the blue arrows on this map that have been added to legalize the multifamily developments that are currently existing there. I'll also note that this map shows the proposed areas for the ongoing Squares and Streets zoning initiative for illustrative purposes only. The amendments before you today do not include any new zoning related to Squares and Streets. Both the R1 and the R2 subdistricts will have new dimensional regulations that are better aligned with what is already built in these areas, as well as make space for contextual housing growth. Within the R1 subdistrict, zoning will allow up to 2 housing units on all lots, exclusive of ADUs. In the R2 subdistrict, zoning will allow up to 3 housing units on all lots, exclusive of ADUs. For both subdistricts, there will be dimensional regulations in place that will make sure that any new construction matches the surroundings. Residents of existing homes will therefore find it a lot easier to make renovations to their homes because zoning will now be updated to match it. The proposed residential zoning includes new methods of land use and development regulations that will make zoning more responsive to existing conditions, including built form and land use patterns, thus yielding better development outcomes in the end. One of the major changes we're proposing is to replace floor area ratios and minimum open space requirements with building lot coverage maximums and permeable area of lot minimums in an effort to more effectively regulate the relationship of a building to its lot. Relatedly, the zoning will now take into account the actual existing lot size, setting different building maximums for large lots and small lots in order to ensure that building size remains consistent and responsive across the neighborhood. Our team also did extensive existing conditions and nonconformity research to identify how to appropriately update yard, height, and use requirements. These have now been right-sized to reflect existing patterns across the neighborhood. And side yards in particular, which were one of the dimensions that displayed the most variation in nonconformity, that nonconformity has been resolved with the introduction of a cumulative side yard requirement, which reflects that most residential buildings in Mattapan are not actually centered in the middle of their lot, but rather justified to one side or the other in order to accommodate a driveway. It's our goal that the type of analytical approach, as well as some of the choices we made to update the zoning, for example, replacing FAR with building lot coverage maximums, will inform the future citywide rezoning process.
And so, as you heard Adriana say, there are two proposed zoning subdistricts which differ based on the number of units allowed in each. All other dimensions will be the same between those two districts, and I'm going to walk you through them right now. So you heard Adriana mention that building lot coverage will respond to the size of the lot. On smaller lots, that is lots less than 5,000 square feet, there will be a maximum building lot coverage of 40%. For larger lots that is greater than or equal to 5,000 square feet, there will be a maximum building lot coverage of 30%. There will be a minimum permeable area of lot of 25% across all lots, a minimum front yard of 10 feet. That flexible side yard you just heard Adriana talk about will be a 3-foot minimum on either side to provide parity with building code, but then a 14-foot cumulative, so both sides have to add up to 14 feet. The minimum rear yard will be 20 feet. The maximum height measured in both stories and feet will be 3 stories and 35 feet. And then a minimum building frontage of 20 feet. And as we've said before, this zoning and these dimensions based on testing really legalize a lot of what is already present in these areas, creating what is a much more reliable zoning code that helps support renovations while allowing development of new housing that looks similar to the size, scale, and unit count that exists today. Next slide. And that's because this zoning, as we've said, is really based on a close and careful analysis of existing conditions, what exists today. We took a look at existing built conditions and found extensive non-conformity with existing zoning, meaning it would be illegal to reproduce or build much of Mattapan today. Including, you can see in this table on the left, things like FAR, more than half of parcels would be non-conforming with FAR, or almost 90% would have a side yard non-conformity. And so using a combination of GIS data, parametric modeling, and hand measuring, hand testing, new zoning controls were chosen to strike a balance between minimizing nonconformity as much as possible, while also choosing dimensions that remain in scale with the neighborhood and something that could actually be found in the neighborhood. As a result, in essentially every case where there was major nonconformity, the rate of that nonconformity under new zoning would be reduced by at least half, meaning it'll be much easier for residents to make changes to their existing homes, adapt them to meet needs, and to ensure that future development will be of a similar scale. And so again, you can look at this table on the right and see something like rear yard, which had over 37%, close to 40% nonconformity, drops down to well under 20%. And that's the same is true for pretty much every zoning dimension. Next slide.
So that sums up the changes that are being proposed for zoning that will guide most types of housing development and home renovation or alteration in Mattapan. However, accessory dwelling units are a bit of a unique type of development. And for this reason, the proposed zoning has specific dimensional regulations solely for ADUs. As I'm sure you're aware, the City of Boston actually already has an ADU program, but it only allows ADUs to be built within the existing building footprint of a home, with very little exterior change allowed by right. Since the program launched in 2018, there have been about 150 ADUs permitted or constructed in Boston, and 18 of those have been in Mattapan. That comes out to be about 50 ADUs per year, and this is good progress, but we know that there's some room for improvement. Proposed zoning will allow ADUs to not just be built more easily with exterior changes to the building, but it will allow more ADU types by right as well, including new detached structures. The owner occupancy requirement, which is currently a requirement for the current ADU program, will be kept in this zoning, which means that the owner of the primary home must live somewhere on the premises, but they can rent the ADU out if they choose to. We are not proposing a parking requirement for ADUs. The proposed zoning changes include new definitions that clearly define the two types of ADUs allowed. And one of the major changes that we're making is that we are defining ADUs as accessory dwelling units. They are smaller than, they're accessory to the main use that is occurring on the property. On the left-hand side of the screen, you see a non-detached accessory dwelling unit, which is usually defined as an addition to an existing home. It might use pre-existing space to create that ADU, or it might create the ADU with new construction, or perhaps a combination of the both. If you can imagine someone who is building an ADU in their basement and then also creating a bump out on the side to increase living space. The maximum size of that ADU is 75% of the square footage of the principal unit, or 1,250 square feet, whichever is smaller. And the maximum height is that the new construction that is built to create that ADU may be no taller than the height of the principal structure. So here we're really right-sizing the size and the living area of the ADU to always ensure that it is smaller than the principal dwelling unit. A homeowner may build up to one non-detached ADU on their property. On the right-hand side, we have detached accessory dwelling units, which are fully separate, smaller structures. They can either be built through fully new construction or the renovation of a pre-existing structure on the lot. The maximum size of a detached ADU has a building floor plate of less than or equal to 900 square feet, or the size of the principal structure's floor plate, whichever is smaller, and the detached ADU may be 1.5 stories, or the height of the principal structure, whichever is smaller. Again, really right-sizing the size of the detached ADU to the size of the main home on the lot. The detached ADU must be at least 5 feet away from any other building on the lot in order to have parity with building code and create and always create safe access on the lot for the ADU. And a homeowner may build up to one detached ADU as well.
So these are the zoning dimensions that would apply for both the R1 and R2 subdistricts for ADUs. These would only apply if a homeowner wants to build an ADU, and they would not apply to any kind of infill development. These zoning dimensions essentially create an increased allowed building envelope for ADUs on residential lots. The building lot coverages of 60% for those smaller lots that is under 5,000 square feet, and then 50% for lots 5,000 square feet and larger are meant to create space on the lot for the development of an ADU that is at least a studio size. The reason that these building lot coverages are larger than the base zoning that we talked about earlier is because these numbers need to accommodate both the footprint of the existing structure and also the new ADU. In addition to any additional structures like garages, et cetera. In addition to that, there will be a minimum permeable area of lot of 15%, a minimum front yard of 5 feet, and a minimum side yard of 3 feet. A minimum rear yard of 20 feet, although it's important to note that detached ADUs would be allowed to be built within that 20 feet. A maximum building height, in addition to the restrictions you heard Adriana talk about on the previous slide. If you wanted to add a story to the existing building to create an ADU in that new story, you could add up to 1 story to the existing building, and then minimum lot frontage of 20 feet. Next slide. And so much like the infill or base zoning that we discussed earlier, ADU zoning was derived from testing using a combination, again, of GIS data, parametric modeling, and hand testing, spot checking. And you can see example of kind of the drawing of one of those test fits on the right here. We tested dimensions on nearly every residential parcel in the study area. And what we found was that while other codes, such as building code, fire code, safety, et cetera, may cause and probably will cause further restrictions, changes to zoning alone by themselves would allow for at least a 600 square foot, that is a studio-sized ADU on a detached ADU on the vast majority of residential parcels. And because the restrictions for detached ADUs are greater than they are for non-detached, we're confident that non-detached ADUs would be possible on nearly every residential parcel in the study area. Although it's difficult to assess the impacts of those other codes, as Adriana mentioned, we've baked in some parity with the building code through our yard requirements to ensure access to light, air, as well as egress. And lastly, the base zoning changes that we discussed earlier will also make it easier to build ADUs, again, by drastically reducing the number of nonconformities. Each nonconformity reduced is a barrier that's reduced to building an ADU.
And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Marcy Osberg to very quickly walk you through some of the support for homeowners that her team has been leading at MOH for building ADUs.
Thank you, Adriana. I'm going to share a little bit more. You can go to the next slide of what Chief Dillon was talking about, how we're expanding support for homeowners. And that really comes in 3 categories. We're making sure that we provide guidance, financing, and support with the process of building an ADU. We currently have a lot of support in place already with our existing ADU program. We have a monthly design workshop that's cross-departmental, and homeowners can get feedback on their actual plans from professionals at the city who can look at what kind of ADU they can build. We also have financing in place to help homeowners have the funding they need to build an ADU, and that's up to $50,000 for income qualifying homeowners. And we have a ADU toolkit that's online that describes regulations, process, and financing for building an ADU. But we're trying to do more to make sure that homeowners can build ADUs. We have recently released code guidance on ADUs and fire safety, which I'll go over in more detail on the next slide. We are working with local banks and lenders to set up new financial products to fill the gap of building an ADU. And we're hiring an ADU navigator and providing technical assistance for income eligible homeowners. So if you can go to the next slide. As Adriana mentioned, we've had a cross-departmental working group that's been focused on how do we communicate clearly the building and fire code requirements for external ADUs, and that's included the fire department, inspectional services department, the planning department, and the mayor's office of housing. So the guidance that we recently released covers topics such as the fire department access road, sprinkler requirements, and fire rating. It does not go over zoning. And the goals of this document are so that homeowners can assess feasibility and cost for building an external ADU. Basically, they'll know what they can and can't do on their property. It also helps professionals provide homeowners with design support and city staff to communicate uniform information about what can be built. You can see an example on the right there of a visual that's in that guidance. And we have many other examples of scenarios like that. So homeowners can look and say, this one is like my lot. What kind of ADU can I build and what are the fire code requirements there? And this visual shows a fire access path that's required. You have to have at least 10 feet of a path when you have an ADU behind an existing building. If you can go to the next slide, please. We also are working hard to support the financing of ADUs. As I mentioned, we have a $50,000 loan available now to income qualifying homeowners, which are households that make under 135% AMI. But we're working with local lenders. You can see in the visuals, the pictures on the right, these are some lenders that came together who understand that we need more financing available to homeowners. $50,000 does not typically cover the cost of an ADU. We know that an internal ADU or basement conversion, something like that, can be around 100,000, and these external ADUs can be 250 to 350. And so we need often additional funding to support homeowners to get those built. So local lenders are coming together with us, and we are hoping to pilot a new financial tool with the support of these local lenders in the spring. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcy.
Thank
Is that
you.
it?
I'd have one last section on the
Sure, go ahead, Audrey. Yep.
on the text updates to improve the function of Article 60, just to improve its function and readability. So we made some text updates to consolidate redundant text throughout Article 60, including substantial updates to the article's following sections that you see here on this slide. And parking minimums were aligned with current Boston Transportation Department policy, which has determined parking maximum ratio guidelines for all areas of Boston. And these parking minimums were aligned with BPDA policy across all uses in Article 60. Secondly, we made some updates to use tables in Article 60. The R1 and the R2 subdistricts follow the same pattern of allowed and forbidden uses as the other residential subdistricts in Mattapan, but we made a few small changes, firstly to allow senior centers and of course accessory dwelling units. And in the MFR subdistrict, we also newly allowed senior centers. Community centers are conditionally allowed in R1 and R2. They are currently conditionally allowed in MFR. We also updated all use tables throughout Article 60 to remove updated uses like orphanage or telephone exchange, and we consolidated similar uses such as the museum public art display space. And finally, White Stadium in Franklin Park, which was previously zoned under the OS Parkland subdistrict, is proposed to be rezoned as an OS Recreation. subdistrict. This change was made in order to reflect the existing and future use of the stadium as a sports and recreation facility. And this is a separate change from the currently proposed and ongoing rezoning to OS Stadium, which is a current a change that is currently being proposed right now. So looking ahead to what's next, especially for ADUs, of course, it's our goal that all Boston residents, not just those in Mattapan, be able to take advantage of the ADU program if they so choose to. So starting just next week, the BPDA is starting a citywide ADU zoning study that will analyze and craft new zoning recommendations necessary for by right development of ADUs in all residential subdistricts in Boston. The study will have two major deliverables. Firstly, of course, being zoning recommendations that address nonconformity and create a by right building envelope for ADUs. And the second being the creation of what we're calling an ADU pattern book, which will be a comprehensive guide that illustrates recommended ADU placement on Boston lot typologies and will be a guide to support homeowners in the development process. The zoning nonconformity and test fit analysis that our team led for Mattapan will inform the citywide process, although of course the actual dimensions will be different based on existing neighborhood context. So with that, I'll open it up for further questions.
Thank you. Questions, comments from the commission?
Hi, it's Aisha. Hi, it's Aisha. Can you hear me?
Yep.
I know this is about Mattapan ADUs. Franklin Park is now included in this vote. Or is that just something you mentioned?
That's
Yes, so what I discussed was a zoning change to change the OS. It is currently zoned as OS Parkland and to change that, rezone it as OS Recreation. And this is for White Stadium in Franklin Park.
I know what it's for and where it is. I just wanted to know, was it part of this Mattapan ADU conversation? Kathleen, maybe you can help.
Yeah, so all of Franklin Park as part of the city's current zoning structure into neighborhood articles is included in what's called Article 60, the Greater Mattapan Neighborhood Article.
Yes.
So
Okay.
because we were bringing forward these really substantive changes to Article 60, including changes to that zoning map, that was a change we wanted to bring forward at the same time, as it reflects the existing use of White Stadium as a recreational asset and better reflects the existing use of it. There is both ongoing proposed zoning changes for changes to that parcel, which would be a second action that would come before the BPDA board and this commission, as well as an Article 80 project related to White Stadium renovation that is currently in the process of Article 80 review. So there's sort of while there's a lot of discussion about White Stadium, this is a small change that really reflects the existing use of the structure and is because it is included within the existing Article 60 Greater Mattapan map. For that White Stadium project, right, and with the Article 80 project, the BPDA looked to convene an IAG group that includes members from many neighborhoods that all surround Franklin Park, including particularly Dorchester, Roxbury, Jamaica Plain, Roslindale, and Mattapan. So this is in some ways a quirk of how the city is divided into these neighborhood article maps. That it is included in Article 60. But when we are projects like that really straddle significance for many neighborhoods, we convene groups to evaluate those that are much larger than one neighborhood.
Thank you, Kathleen. My other question is, I did hear that the community was really involved. There was community engagement. How much would you say roughly people that attended these community meetings from the Greater Mattapan Council, West Selden and vicinity in Mattapan, another civic organization? Were these organizations involved heavily in the engagement and gave back positive feedback?
Yes, they definitely were, particularly the Greater Mattapan Neighborhood Council, who we've worked with extensively, not just in this current sort of zoning community engagement process, but also all the way back in the planning process with Plan Mattapan, which really formed the basis of the planning recommendations that guided the zoning that you see before you today. So I can definitely say that Greater Mattapan Neighborhood Council, other community groups that are local to the area were extensively involved in crafting the zoning, in crafting the planning recommendations that inform the zoning and providing feedback on the draft zoning as well.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Aisha. Any other questions, comments from the commissioners?
I had a question. Nice job, folks. I think this is terrific. I had a question regarding the accessory dwelling unit, detached one, and the 20-foot requirement for the rear yard setback. Is that going to be an issue? Because many of these houses also have, have these garages that appear to be very close to that rear yard setback. Is that something you discovered in your analysis of Mattapan?
So I think when we were taking a look at the existing conditions analysis, we were mostly looking at the main structure. So I think one of the main things we were seeing was, in order to actually be able to create detached ADUs, we would have to allow ADUs to be built in the rear yard, where, like you say, those garages often are located. So that actually does enable people, if they have a garage, they want to convert into an ADU or something like that, well, that's already legal, because then the ADU would be located within that setback and it's already located there.
I see. So let's say the garage is within 5 feet of the rear yard, it's already there, so they wouldn't have to have an issue to convert that garage to an ADU, correct?
Yes, I believe that's correct.
Okay, great. Thank you for the clarification.
Anyone else? Hearing none. Public testimony, Jeff?
If anybody would like to testify on this hearing, please raise your hand. We have a couple of hands. Dolores, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, yes, good morning. My name is Dolores Bogdanian. I live in Boston at 452 Park Drive. I would just like to hear directly from the BPDA. I would hope that you might ask to have clarity that this change with regard to open space and converting it into recreation space that might allow a stadium and stadium uses and concessions and so forth is limited to the White Stadium and would not be applied more broadly elsewhere. Thank you. That's my question. Because I think that would be really scary.
You're not here to ask questions. You're here to make your point.
Well, my point is that if this,
Yeah,
if this
you're not-
proposal
we
applies
don't
more
entertain-
broadly, then it
we're
goes
not gonna have
beyond White
crossfire
Stadium.
here. We're not gonna have crossfire here. You're not here to ask questions. You're here to make your comments, and they'll be duly noted.
All right, my comment is that if it were to be more broadly utilized outside of the stadium, White Stadium parcel, then this is a very errant proposal on the part of the BPDA. That's my comment.
Thank you, Dolores.
Okay, Ruth Whitney, go ahead, unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you so much for letting me speak. I guess if it's just for comment, I haven't had a chance to fully read everything, but I would just hope that there might also be included some protections for possible trees, or at least some language around the fact that the vast majority of the tree canopy in Boston is on private property. So I'm just curious about, with some of the shift in zoning for additional dwelling units, how that might affect that tree canopy, since there's also a lot of concern around that citywide. Thanks.
Thank you.
And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Jeff. At this point, we'll close out this portion of the hearing and enter our business session.
Excuse me, my hand was raised. I'm in
I'm
Yona
sorry.
Boston.
That's all right. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry about that.
Okay, thank
State your
you.
name. Sorry.
All right, no problem. So good morning. My name is Amanyona Bosman. I am a homeowner for over 25 years in Mattapan. I recently built a 1-bedroom additional dwelling unit in my basement in my single-family home. I support the proposed zoning changes for Article 60 residential zoning amendment for the fact that it creates affordable housing opportunities for Mattapan. And for the past several years, I have seen the displacement that's happening in my community, and I'm greatly concerned about how we can mitigate that. I see the ADU as being one of the solutions, and specifically the new changes for zoning, because now it allows, which is the as of right zoning, which allows the homeowners to build detached ADUs on their lots. Not only does it help with just affordable housing units, but it also helps with accessible units. And that's something that we need to have, more accessible units at 1 story at street elevation for those that are in need. So I'm in full support.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
At this point, absent hearing another voice, we're gonna close out this portion of the hearing and enter our business session. Any comments, questions, motions?
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion. We approve text amendment application number 519, map amendment application number 768, articles 2, 10, and 60, and map 8A, 8B, and map 8C in the Greater Mattapan Neighborhood District.
Second. Motion is second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, we'll go to a roll call. Jill Hatton,
Yes.
Michael Nichols,
Yes.
Michael DeMella,
Yes.
Nelson Arroyo,
Yes.
David Marr,
Yes.
Drew Leff,
Yes.
Aisha Miller,
Yes.
Midori Morikawa,
Yes.
Ricardo Ostrich,
Yes.
and Jay Hurley. I vote yes. That's a clean sweep. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10, nothing if I'm reading this right. Congratulations. Thank you. Good presentation.
Thank you.
We'll now move to our 9:15 meeting. This is a hearing before the Boston Zoning Commission and to consider a petition for the approval of text amendment application number 517 and map amendment application number 767 with respect to the New Market 21st Century Industrial District zoning. The hearing is duly advertised December 21st, 2023 in the Boston Herald. In the Boston Zoning Commission hearing on petitions, the proponent will first present their case as subject question by members of the commission only. We are taking support and opposition at the same time. If you're planning to testify, please take the time to verify that your computer microphone is active. Click the hand icon on your Zoom control panel. This will signal staff that you would like to speak. When your hand is raised, your hand icon will be blue. If you're calling into the meeting and would like to testify, please dial *9 to raise your hand. When I call for public testimony, a member of the staff will announce your name and allow you to speak. You must unmute your microphone. Your webcam will not be active. Please give your full name, any group affiliation, announce whether you support or oppose the petition. Each speaker will be allowed up to 2 minutes. If necessary, I'll advise you when you have 30 seconds remaining. At that time, please summarize your remarks so the meeting can continue and others may be heard. Finally, the proponents are allowed a brief 5 to 10 minute period for rebuttal if they so desire. Please begin the presentation.
Good morning. My name is Jack Halverson, and I'm a planner with the zoning reform team here at the BPDA. I'm here this morning to present the New Market zoning amendment that implements recommendations from Plan New Market. Plan New Market, the 21st Century Economy Initiative, was adopted by the BPDA board on August 17th, 2023. The BPDA board voted then on December 7th, 2023 to petition this commission to adopt the zoning amendment. The plan originated in Imagine Boston 2030, which identified New Market as a vital industrial area of Boston that should have its key industrial uses preserved and enhanced. This zoning amendment is an update to the existing land uses in the New Market area to affirm its importance and reflect how modern industrial uses can be regulated through the zoning code. The BPDA took this directive from Imagine Boston 2030 to begin planning for the industrial area and defining what a 21st century industrial neighborhood looks like. As defined in the plan, and after 4 years of engagement with stakeholders and community members, 21st century industry in Newmarket maintains both traditional industrial uses and arts uses while welcoming compatible and supportive commercial spaces. Here's a brief recap of the public engagement for the planning process that started before the pandemic and continued through last year. There were over 25 public meetings, including open houses, chats with the planner, advisory group meetings, workshops in the neighborhood, and planning staff also facilitated additional office hour sessions as well. The draft zoning amendment was then released on August 17th, the same day the plan was adopted by the BPDA board, followed by a 6-week public comment period, which included a public meeting. And we originally brought the zoning amendment before the BPDA board on October 12th, but the agenda item was tabled after Congressman Lynch requested a briefing on the zoning changes. Since the board meeting on October 12th, senior BPDA leadership met with Congressman Lynch, Senator Collins, and Councillor Flynn to discuss the proposed zoning changes and how the city is approaching industrial areas, not just for Newmarket, but in other parts of the city as well. We then brought the same zoning amendment before the BPDA board on December 7th, where they voted to petition the zoning commission for approval. The adopted plan had specific zoning recommendations for 3 new subdistricts, including building heights, land uses, and setbacks. We've taken this directive from the plan to propose an update to the Newmarket Article 90 in the zoning code. I also want to note on this slide with the map that the original planning process started by looking at a broader area that extended further to the east near the South Bay area and beyond. But early in the planning process, it was identified that those areas would really be more appropriate for the continuation of residential uses, and that the focus for industrial zoning should be in the places that you see highlighted here. The proposed zoning changes include mapping 3 new subdistricts and amending the boundary for Article 90's jurisdiction, creating new industrial land use categories that, and also reorganizing the use table, establishing a new dimensional table, removing FAR as a regulating metric, and several other miscellaneous provisions. Here's the existing zoning map for the Newmarket Industrial Commercial Neighborhood District, which is regulated by Article 90. And the planned Newmarket study area actually extended beyond the boundary of Article 90 to the south, and includes part of an industrial subdistrict within the Greater Roxbury Neighborhood Article 50, which is called the Newmarket Industrial Development Area. So our proposal is to redraw the district boundary for Article 90 and move it into this industrial area of Article 50, and rename this entire district as the Newmarket 21st Century Industrial District. As it relates to zoning reform more broadly, the goal here is really to regulate the same districts in the same part of the code. The shaded area here is what's moved from Article 50 to Article 90. And you'll see here that there's a small island of a residential subdistrict that will remain in Article 50. A core planning principle of Plan Newmarket was to ensure that residential uses, which are not compatible with the industrial uses, remain outside the district boundary, and that residential use is not allowed in any Newmarket subdistricts. This residential island will remain in Article 50, and we don't propose any changes for the residential subdistricts within that Article 50. And here's the proposed Article 50 zoning map, where you can see this amended boundary with that residential island. Now I'll go through the proposed subdistricts, which include core industrial, gateway industrial, and creative industrial. The core industrial subdistrict retains traditional industrial uses while allowing for some expansion of lab, office, and R&D, and also smaller commercial storefronts that support those industrial uses. Height maximums here are proposed to be 5 stories and 95 feet. And again, throughout Newmarket, no residential uses are allowed. The Gateway Industrial Subdistrict is a transitional area with height maximums of 8 stories and 140 feet. And a key aspect of the gateway is a requirement for at least 15% of the building being used as industrial or workforce training. And for creative industrial, the heights are proposed to be lower at 5 stories and 65 feet, with only light and creative industrial uses allowed. The existing zoning in this area has produced some smaller scale industrial buildings that can be rehabbed and reused, and several properties have creative industrial and light manufacturing uses today. In order to more clearly assign industrial uses to each of these subdistricts, we're proposing 3 explicit industrial use categories, which are light industrial, heavy industrial, and creative and arts industrial. Creative and arts industrial is this new category that incorporates traditional artist uses along with other emerging creative uses. We've also added in uses that are currently not allowed in Newmarket, but do exist there today, like elementary schools, secondary schools, and public services. And another set of changes is simplifying and reorganizing the use table in Article 90 by alphabetizing the uses and consolidating duplicative footnotes. So now I'll get into the uses for each of the subdistricts. This is the core industrial subdistrict. The zoning here distinguishes between uses on the 1st and 2nd floors and then the upper floors. So traditional light and heavy industrial uses and trade schools are allowed on the 1st and 2nd floors. Also on those floors, creative industrial and highly trafficked commercial like restaurants are allowed as long as they don't occupy more than 25% of the square footage. And this is really to maintain the existing industrial nature of the subdistrict and prioritize higher intensity uses. Lab and office will be allowed on those upper floors as well. For the gateway, all of these uses will be allowed in some capacity except for residential. Again, there's this provision of at least 15% of square footage being light or heavy industrial, trade schools, or creative industrial uses. And finally, the creative industrial subdistrict. Here we plan to allow light industrial, trade schools, creative industrial, higher trafficked commercial uses, and then lab and office. Heavy industrial and residential will be forbidden here. Now to get into the dimensional table. So we're proposing a new table D for dimensional regulations. And a key recommendation from the plan was removing FAR as a regulating metric. We're requiring setbacks along Southampton Street and the south side of Magazine Street to accommodate future street tree plantings and an improved public realm experience there. For the creative industrial subdistrict, we've included a maximum building lot coverage requirement to provide an opportunity for smaller scale development that better matches the built form there today. And we also have a requirement for a minimum ground floor ceiling height of 21 feet in the core and the gateway subdistricts. This is to ensure appropriate feasibility for industrial uses that require heavy loading, not just for the existing industrial tenants, but to maintain that going into the future. With this ground floor ceiling height, we're proposing an amendment to the existing definition in Article 2 to include the key phrase of predominant ground floor elevation. This is because those industrial ground floors may have prominent loading docks or other multi-level ground floor interiors that you would need to measure from to determine what the ground floor ceiling height is. Another change here is to align our zoning with the current BTD parking maximum guidance. We've updated the parking minimums to reflect those BTD regulations, and this is consistent with the other zoning amendments that you've seen come before you recently, as we're doing this consistently across the code. And finally, performance standards are this unique set of regulations for industrial areas. They regulate emissions and contamination from different industrial uses. Performance standards actually live as a definition in Article 2. So our new performance standards section in Article 90 now just references that definition. This is consistent with other articles throughout the code that also reference performance standards. And before I close, I just wanted to mention a couple of comments that we received through the public comment period prior to the BPDA board approval. Some adjacent owners who had property just outside the study area expressed wanting to allow residential use in Newmarket. However, from the outset of the planning process, residential use was really determined to be incompatible with the industrial nature of the area, and allowing residential use would be contradictory to those land use goals that were identified in the plan. The Friends of Melnia Cass also asked for provisions to encourage street tree plantings and landscaping. And as I mentioned previously, we're requiring setbacks along Southampton and Magazine Street for street tree plantings. And the plan also includes urban design guidelines for those as well. And finally, I just wanted to note that input from the Newmarket Business Improvement District has been instrumental throughout both the planning and zoning processes, and to really thank them for connecting us with their stakeholders in the area. So thank you for your time this morning, and
Thanks.
would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Jack. Questions, comments from the commission? Jack, can you take the presentation down so we can see each other?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a brief, just a brief comment or question for Jack. I noticed when I was reading the materials, there were some provisions that were particular to the parcels that abut the residential district that's contained within all of these. And I was wondering, Jack, if you could just clarify some of the, interaction with that specific group of property owners and the accommodations you made, because it did look like there were some particular height and other modifications that were made to accommodate that residential parcel that's part of Article 50, I think you said, that's still in the middle of this entire Newmarket area.
Right. So I'm not sure I can speak specifically to our engagement with those property owners, as that occurred through the planning process. And I'd be happy to tag in Kathleen if she has any more insight on that. But the setbacks really were designed exactly as you said, to sort of respect the existing built form there. And that area is contained within the creative industrial subdistrict, which has lower height maximums to begin with at the 5 stories and 65 feet. So I think that was part of the intention there as well, not just the setbacks, but the height as well.
The height. Okay. All right. Thank you. No, but I did notice that as we read through the detailed materials, that there was some particular acknowledgement of a transition between that residential area and these new industrial designations. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. Any other questions, comments?
Jill, I had similar concerns as well. So I spoke in an earlier conversation, and I think that I felt that they were addressed. So, but thanks for bringing that up.
Thanks. That's great to hear. Thanks.
Questions, comments? If not, public testimony, Jeff?
Yep. Right now, Sue Sullivan. Sue, go ahead.
Good morning. Thank you all. I'm Sue Sullivan. I'm the Executive Director of the Newmarket Business Improvement District, and we wholeheartedly support these zoning changes. It was a long process, a long, very public process that really worked. I want to give a lot of credit to the BPDA for working through a lot of questions and a lot of concerns different people had. We do believe that what this will do for the Newmarket area is to allow us to maintain that industrial nature and the 20,000 plus jobs, mainly blue collar jobs and all that we have in Newmarket, but also to poise us for the future for development moving forward into a new industrial types of businesses. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue.
All I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Jeff. At this point, we'll close out this portion of the hearing and we'll enter our business session. Questions, comments, motions?
So Chairman, I'm happy to make a motion. I move to approve text amendment application number 517, map amendment application number 767, articles 2 and 90, map 6A, 6B, 6C, and map 6E.
Second.
Thank you, Michael. Motion is second. Any discussion on the motion?
Just with the motion, I want to acknowledge the work of the New Market bid, and certainly I think as the BPDA noted, their support for this area and support for this these changes, I think, is instrumental to seeing the path forward for that area.
Thank you, Michael. Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll go to a roll call. Jill Hatton,
Yes.
Michael Nichols,
Yes.
Michael DeMella,
Yes.
Nelson Arroyo,
Yes.
David Marr,
Yes.
Drew Leff,
Yes.
Aisha Miller,
Yes.
Midori Morikawa,
Yes.
Ricardo Ostrich,
Yes.
and I vote yes. It's 10-0. Congratulations. Good presentation. Good luck.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, Jeff. Does anybody need a quick break before we start the next one? No objections. This is a hearing before the Boston Zoning Commission will consider a approval of text amendment application number 518 with respect to the waiver of affordable housing in Article 80. The hearing was duly advertised December 21st, 2023 in the Boston Herald and the Boston Zoning Commission hearing on petitions. The proponent will first present their case as subject to question by members of the commission only. We are taking support and opposition at the same time. If you are planning to testify, please take the time to verify that your computer microphone is active. Click the hand icon on your Zoom control panel. This will signal staff. If you would like to speak, when your hand is raised, your icon will be blue. If you're calling into the meeting and would like to speak, please dial *9 to raise your hand. When I call for public testimony, a member of the staff will announce your name and allow you to speak. You must unmute your microphone. Your webcam will not be active. Please give your full name and a group affiliation and announce whether you support or oppose the petition. Each speaker will be allowed up to 2 minutes. If necessary, I'll advise you when you have 30 seconds remaining. At that time, please summarize your remarks so the meeting can continue and others may be heard. Finally, the proponents are allowed a brief 5 to 10 minute period for rebuttal if they so desire. Please begin the presentation.
Morning, Commissioners. Thank you for your time this morning. My name is Caitlin Coppinger, and I'm the Deputy Director of Comprehensive Planning. Before we get into the proposed zoning text amendment, I just want to set the framework for this morning's agenda item and why we're proposing this tactical change to the zoning code. On October 6, 2023, Mayor Wu issued an executive order to streamline the approval process for affordable housing projects. In November of 2023, the BPDA board adopted that executive order. And for further clarity, when I speak about affordable housing this morning, that's being defined as 60% or more of the units in a project being restricted at or below 100% area median income. The executive order had 5 articles that the city and the agency was tasked with prioritizing. 1, the prioritization of affordable housing in the development review process. All agencies were asked to review the current practices and adopt procedures that will prioritize the review of affordable housing projects. The second was to create a critical path for Article 80 review and approval. The BPDA has been looking at ways to streamline Article 80 review processes and to reduce duplicative reviews for affordable housing projects. The third one was to study and address zoning challenges to affordable housing development and propose recommendations to the code, which is part of the reason why we're here today. The fourth one was to create a system to track affordable housing projects, their review and approvals process across all agencies. And the fifth one was to establish a governance structure for implementation of this actual executive order. So why was this executive order necessary? Boston is in a severe housing crisis given the exponentially rising rents and home prices. Half of all renters and 38% of all homeowners are cost burdened, in which they pay more than 30% of their income on housing related costs, making life unstable for Boston residents. Affordable housing is a critical cornerstone of thriving communities, impacting various facets of individual lives and the overall well-being and their overall well-being. Beyond being a fundamental need, it directly influences economic stability by allowing individuals and families to allocate resources to other essentials like healthcare and education. On top of the rising costs of rental and home ownership, the cost to build housing is significantly increasing, and we're seeing the rise of construction, land, and financing rates that make it increasingly difficult to build or renovate. The need to evaluate internal processes to create better and more affordable housing is necessary to be able to deliver results in the wake of today's housing crisis. During the information gathering stage of the after the executive order was issued, a recurring concern emerged regarding existing affordable housing projects of scale and their planned capital improvement projects, which typically involve the following: kitchen and bathroom renovations, flooring upgrades, HVAC system improvements, and exterior and accessibility upgrades. These projects are generally planned very far in advance, and given their capital budget needs and because of the size of the renovation, often trigger Article 80 large project review through what's called a substantial rehabilitation clause. That says that a renovation project over 50,000 square feet triggers Article 80 review. As a result, they're required to go through multiple rounds of review by various city agencies for changes that are largely internal to the project and do not create material changes to its overall impacts. This inadvertently prolongs project timelines and increases costs for initiatives that directly benefit existing affordable housing residents in Boston. Part of the scope of the order was to examine processes that the agency has to prioritize affordable housing review. And one of the tools that we have is that the current code allows for the waiver of certain affordable housing projects that rehabilitate or construct affordable housing units. There are three current criteria for waiving. One, that the project triggers review by the agency and is in a planned development area, a 121A, or an urban renewal area. The second one is that the BPDA determines that there are no adverse impacts outside the lot. And three, that the authority determines that the project will increase the availability or quality of affordable housing. The limiting factor really here is that the code puts boundary limitations on projects that are in PDA, urban renewal, or 121A areas. Going back to the concern we heard about existing public housing renovation projects that may trigger Article 80, we took a look at what type of projects that would qualify for this waiver, and the majority of existing affordable housing stock would not actually qualify because they were not built at a time that they were subject to a PDA, 121A, or an urban renewal area. So we are proposing to strike the PDA, 121A, and urban renewal parcel limitations in this waiver. This means that any qualified affordable housing project that would trigger review by the authority could be considered for a waiver of Article 80. So to clarify again, what projects would actually apply here? One, projects that are 60% or more affordable at or below 100% AMI. Two, projects that do not have adverse impacts outside of the lot, and those impacts are defined by what typically is reviewed through Article 80, things such as transportation, environmental, sound, wind effects, and its overall site plan. And the third being that the project will increase the availability or the quality of the housing stock. An example of a project that would qualify is the Boston Housing Authority Doris Bunty project that recently went through Article 80 approval. This project is an existing public housing development that was planning kitchen, bath, common area improvements that triggered Article 80 just due to the sheer size of its actual project. It was over 100,000 square feet. This project is improving the quality of living conditions for these residents, and if the project were able to receive a waiver of Article 80, they could have removed over a year from the timeline to get residents into improved housing conditions. So what would this actual process look like here? First, a project who thinks that they're qualified will be able to submit an application for a waiver outlining how the project actually meets the criteria for a waiver. The second step in this process is that the BPDA would notify the community through its mailing list that an application for a waiver has been submitted. The third step in this process is that the BPDA would review the application for consistency with the code and determine that if a project is eligible or not. The BPDA board would then vote on it actually granting that waiver of Article 80. The project would go through design review with BPDA staff, and a waiver of Article 80 does not mean that any other city department or processes will be waived. The BPDA does not actually have the authority to do that. Examples of this could be, the parks hearing or, public improvement commission if things like that get triggered. That concludes my presentation, and I hope to answer any questions that you guys have. But before we do move on to the next process, I'm joined today by Boston Housing Authority Administrator Kenzie Bach, and would like to turn the floor to her before we get started.
Jay had to step away for a second, so. Kenzie, if, are there any questions from the commissioners before we start taking testimony?
Sorry, Jeff, I do see Kenzie's hand raised. If I
Okay,
start.
hold on a second.
Or sorry, administrator.
Sorry about that, Kenzie, go ahead.
No, that's fine. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Great. Hi, commissioners. It's lovely to see you. I think this might be my first time in front of you in my new role. I've been here before as a counselor, but now I'm the head of the Housing Authority. And just really wanted to speak about this today and just kind of give you some context. So for folks may remember, we had the mayor's State of the City last night. A year ago at the State of the City, the mayor announced that the BHA would be going fossil fuel free, which is something that I'm thrilled about. We have the most ambitious, aggressive goal timeline wise in the country of any housing authority to get that done by 2030. What's great about that is that as we look at like the federal funds coming from the Inflation Reduction Act, like we're putting public housing residents at the front of that line. And we're saying like public housing residents should be the ones who get these like cleaner apartments first and ASAP and not at the back because they're living in old buildings. And, you know, there are huge public health ramifications of that in addition to decarbonizing. Like, you know, it's going to mean ventilation. It's going to mean that we have cooling in unit for the first time for a lot of our residents. It's going to mean new healthy appliances. Right now we have we know we have real air quality issues that gas stoves just make worse in a lot of our units. And we have a higher incidence of asthma amongst our residents. So there's like, you know, for us at the Housing Authority, there's a big public health interest. There's this, you know, big climate interest in the decarbonization work. And then it's also an opportunity for us to just update the units and make them nicer for people. And so it's like, it's really exciting. It is expensive, and we are running at like every possible federal, state, local grant opportunity to do this. At Mildred C. Haley, the mayor gave us $50 million in capital money to jumpstart this project on the side of the site that we're retaining in BHA ownership. And we've got that project all spec'd out, ready to go. The problem is that my developments are so big that, as Caitlin alluded to, they kind of automatically trigger the Article 80 thresholds. But this is really renovation projects. And they're already very expensive. We're trying to stretch every dollar to cover the like full, you know, 10,000 unit portfolio. And so if with every one of these projects, we have to add an Article 80 process on top, it like really imperils our ability to reach that 2030 deadline. And it just means that the resources don't go as far. So for us, this is really important. And I really appreciate the fact that the BPDA has found a way to do this that is just that simple deletion of existing language. I think that, you know, there's been some confusion with folks thinking that that whole provision is being added to the code. But as Caitlin said, that provision is already in the code. And it's just meaning that at a place like Mildred Haley, which isn't in a PDA or a UR district or a 121A, that we can take advantage of it. And you know, the BPDA has interpreted that historically because of the sort of no major impacts outside the lot to really only apply to this type of thing where it's really a big renovation project. And it's just something that we really need to like meet our climate goals in the city. I mean, the BHA, just for reference, our buildings collectively across the city are about 11 million square feet. So when we talk about like the goal of decarbonizing Boston, we're a really important piece of that puzzle. So, you know, we have extensive community process for any project that we undertake. The Mildred C. Haley one, we've been meeting with the task force for like months and months and months now. And actually it was advocacy of the public housing residents on the site that got the mayor to put that $50 million in the capital budget. And, you know, we've been in meetings with them figuring out exactly what we're going to do. We're going to do the updated open spaces on the site as well. So we're really excited about this project and about projects like it. The mayor announced last night that we're going to do a geothermal conversion at Franklin Field. It'll be the first network geothermal in Boston. So like we're kind of all guns blazing on the green transformation for public housing residents. And I'm so proud of it, but this is like a critical piece. So I just really want to underscore that because I think there has been some confusion about sort of what's this for and what does this mean? And it really is to enable us to make this huge transformation in our capital stock. So thank you so much for your consideration and thank you to Caitlin for all of her work.
I'm back, Jeff.
Right, your show. We haven't had any questions from commissioners. We took Kenzie out of turn, so if you
Okay,
commissioners have questions.
so we have public testimony? Question, I'm sorry. Any questions or comments from the commissioners? If you hear any banging, they're fixing my refrigerator.
Can I just ask Caitlin a quick question? We did
Go
get,
ahead. Sure. Yeah.
we did get some comments, public comments, letters this week regarding new construction. And I guess could you maybe speak a little bit? Kenzie's kind of outlined a lot of the applicability of this provision to the existing portfolio, which is very easy to understand and clear. Because these are affordable projects, which would mean they'd be 60% or more affordable. Is it the case that there just isn't a huge pipeline of that now, given the economics to construct affordable housing? Or do you envision that this provision would create, which, I mean, we would hope it would, but I'm not sure if how that would be implemented if there were new projects of significant size that would typically trigger Article 80 of affordable housing. Well, there was just some confusion, I think, in the correspondence we got, and I was asking if you could clarify the BPDA's position on these waivers.
Yeah,
in those cases.
I'm definitely happy to take a stab at that question. And I think there's two different responses here. One being that the provision that we are looking to amend already does exist in the code. And if we were to waive, we could have waived affordable housing new construction projects if we wanted to, based on how it is actually written, but actually based on the interpretation of the code and how we've looked at this in the past, it is very hard to make the case that any new construction project would have adverse impacts outside of the lot that are subject to Article 80. You know, a new project will have transportation impacts, they'll have environmental impacts that were not there before. So that is something why we wouldn't necessarily see a ton of or any new construction projects actually seeking this waiver, and why we have really been utilizing that renovation example here. I think a way to actually create new affordable housing is through the way that I started off my presentation, is that we have the executive order for streamlining affordable housing. One thing that I've been doing with the Mayor's Office of Housing and then the governance structure committee that we've created is to look at ways of, you have your regular Article 80 process. How do we make that faster for affordable housing projects? And that is a separate process. And we're looping that into Article 80 modernization. So we can kind of take a look at how the entire process is changing and how we can actually make meaningful changes within that for affordable housing projects. So I think that kind of gets at your question.
Yes, it does, exactly. Thank you very much, Caitlin. Thank you.
I think I would just comment briefly that in light of that explanation, I think public comment that's to be received today should take that into consideration. The fact that what the BPDA is saying is that it is hard to imagine a new construction project that is considered as not having any adverse impact, and that's being heard by the commission today. Jeff, public comment?
Yep, we have a few hands raised, Mr. Chairman. Josh Zachem. Josh, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. My name is Josh Zachem. I am the Executive Director of Housing Forward Massachusetts, a nonprofit research and education organization dedicated to supporting and advocating for smarter policies that will lead to the creation of more housing and more affordable housing across Massachusetts. I also had the privilege of previously serving as a District 8 Boston City Councilor and Chair of the Council's Committee on Housing and Community Development. I come here today in support of this proposed amendment to the Boston zoning code in accordance with Mayor Wu's executive order to create more affordable housing faster. This limited waiver of Article 80 for affordable housing only is a well thought out policy that will speed the creation of much needed affordable housing across the city of Boston. Our organization, Housing Forward, 100% supports this implementation. We, in fact, believe we should go even further and create more waivers for affordable housing projects across the city, but obviously that's not before the commission today. But right now, this amendment is an important and strong first step that, as you heard from Administrator Bach and the BPDA, will absolutely directly make it easier and less expensive to create and update some of the much needed affordable housing across the city of Boston. So I thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, for your time and urge you to support this amendment. Thank you.
Okay, next, Mary Mendonca. Mary, go ahead.
Good morning. Thank you. My name is Mary Lou Mendonca, and I'm a staff attorney in the Housing Unit of Greater Boston Legal Services, or GBLS. Our team works closely with the Mildred C. Haley Tenants Organization, which represents residents of that development. GBLS would like to express our strong support of this amendment. We've been very pleased to see the BHA provide opportunities for the tenant organization and for residents to review and comment throughout the rehabilitation of buildings at Mildred C. Haley, as Administrator Bach mentioned. Unfortunately, even with the best of intentions and with significant resident input, this can be a slow and complicated process for the affected tenants. Residents must temporarily relocate all their families and all of their belongings before returning to the newly renovated units. We believe this amendment meshes with the desires of the residents and the tenant organization to expedite relocations and minimize disruptions to the lives of tenants. And we believe this change would have a similar beneficial impact on Boston residents living at other developments in the future. So we respectfully ask for the Commission's approval of this amendment. Thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Okay, Martin, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to testify. My name is Martin Rett. I'm a resident of the Back Bay and chair of the Neighborhood Association of the Back Bay. We and other people throughout the city, other residents and organizations, including, for example, ADCO, the Alliance of Downtown Civic Organizations, oppose this amendment for the very simple reason that while we support and respect the very persuasive arguments presented by Kenzie Bok for excluding the kind of work that she is doing or the housing authority is doing to improve existing affordable housing, we think this can be done without this amendment, and something that is clearly focused on it. And we have suffered from a tremendous lack of clarity into exactly what the implications and consequences of this amendment will be. At a public hearing, when Kenzie Bok also testified, we in fact very much appreciated what she said. And we specifically asked BPDA staff, would this amendment be applied to new construction? And could it be applied to new constructions which might contain some affordable housing, but also lots of other uses, including non-residential uses? And we were assured it would only be applied to existing affordable housing. Then, when the BPDA board, very soon after, despite our requests for the language in the amendment to be modified, approved putting this amendment before you today, Chief Jemison said, oh, great, this will in fact enable more affordable housing to be constructed, which is something that we want. And we can
30 seconds, Martin.
Yeah, we can see situations arising in which lawyers will drive a truck through the loophole and get their projects up and suggest that you don't need Article 80 review. The principle, the BPDA itself should decide when or not to apply its Article 80 review is a very, very dangerous one. And I think it clearly is a path that we're on to reduce community involvement, which, contrary to some narratives, has actually contributed a great deal to improvements in the projects that eventually
Thank you, Martin. Thank you, Martin. 2 minutes are up. Thank you.
Councilor Durkin. Councilor, go ahead.
Hello, I'm not sure if I'm able to go on video. because I haven't been elevated to panelist. Can you?
We can hear you.
You should be good to go now.
Hi, thanks so much. Sorry for the technical difficulties. The leading issues that folks come to my office.
Excuse me, could you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, I'm Sharon Durkin. I'm the counselor for District 8. You've heard from my two
Right.
predecessors, Josh Zakam and Kenzie
No
Bach.
problem. Thank you, Council.
So I wanted to add my voice. The leading issue that constituents come to my office and most recognize is the housing crisis in our city and making our city more affordable. Boston is one of the least affordable cities in the US. I'm speaking in support of the zoning amendment today to express my support in moving urgently forward to meet the need for affordable housing in our city. As the administrator, Kenzie Bach, noted, this will have impacts on BHA renovations and making affordable housing greener for city residents. Another important aspect of this conversation is community process. It is absolutely important to garner the thoughts of the community that is directly impacted by large projects. But I believe this amendment strikes the balance of allowing the BPDA to expedite valuable rehabilitations of BHA projects and the limitation of waiving these only if projects meet strict criteria puts a damper on the city's ability to meet the need for affordable housing. So I want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to ensure affordable housing in our city. I do think more could have been done to explain the impacts of this to civic organizations prior to this vote. But nevertheless, I am in support of this proposal and I urge you guys to support it today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Council.
Okay, Ruth Whitney. Go ahead, Ruth.
Sorry
Yeah,
about that. Thank you so much for letting me speak. And thank you also, Kenzie, for joining and explaining the many benefits for the BHA. I really hope that we can secure that, as it sounds like an absolutely fantastic thing for the city. That said, I do oppose this, and I am a member of some groups that oppose it. I'm in Dorchester Center with my family. There seems to be this idea circulating that residents who love this city enough to call it home and have worked a lifetime or generations to have a space to call home are all suddenly wealthy, privileged, and obstructionist for caring about how it is to live in our homes and wanting to make them places people want to keep living. This effort to streamline Article 80 affordable projects doesn't just affect the BHA, it affects a lot of other areas. Unfortunately, it really seems socially and environmentally degrading in these other aspects. It feels a bit predatory. It feeds upon our desire to help house more people and fears around the cost of housing and climate change. And it feels like there's really a picture being painted in broad selective strokes that promote residents supporting this without really understanding what we're signing away in terms of protecting our environment. In a disputed large development in my neighborhood, 6 years of fighting resulted in what was called a much better proposal by the developers themselves. And after lauding these improvements, it's now being branded as a horrible example of NIMBYism. But without this resistance, there would be no green space. And this is a direct result. My husband and I are parents of kids in the city, and we will not be able to afford any but 3 of the units in this affordable building that is being pushed. Who is this affordable for? We're at a tipping point in the climate. Massachusetts and Boston are in fact shrinking despite the word that's being put out. And there's a drumbeat to build. We should be scrambling to partner with residents and other groups to make real resilience, not go to war or trick people into silence.
Thank you, Ruth. Your 2 minutes are up. Thank you.
Okay. Jared Johnson. Go ahead, Jared.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity to provide public comment today. My name is Jared Johnson. I'm a board member at Abundant Housing, and I'm speaking in full support of this effort. As others have mentioned, redundant review adds time, complexity, and ultimately cost to affordable housing rehab and expansion. And I think that's the opposite of what is needed during this housing crisis. And I think this would be a critical tool to help speed along some of the renovation. And I'm really glad that Greater Boston Legal Services was here to speak to the actual suffering, real suffering that happens when residents have to pick up their belongings and move their entire lives. And this would shorten that. And I'm also glad that Kinsey was able to speak to the robust community engagement that the BHA already does. And I know that the community development sector at large actually does good community engagement. And I would say that the concerns about this are not in good faith. You know, this is a region with some of the most respected community development corporations and great examples of public-private partnership to build deeply affordable housing. And I think it's critical that we trust hardworking city staff, the CDC sector, and the BPDA board, in their recommendations about which projects to give exemptions to. And I think we need to acknowledge the privilege of being able to attend a 9:30 meeting and talk about who is not in this room, which is BHA residents, which is low-income folks. And those concerns, quite frankly, are more important than any of the concerns that are being brought up today.
30 seconds, Jared.
Yes, thank you. Again, I think these are deeply unserious concerns that will potentially delay projects that would make affordable housing and make public housing greener, safer for residents, and more comfortable to live in. And so again, I would urge support for this effort. And again, one, support because what we're really talking about here is making it easier to renovate existing affordable housing and public housing. But even if it was,
Thank you, Jared. Your time is up. Thank you.
Okay, Molly Goodman. Molly, go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Molly Goodman. I'm a lifelong Boston resident, and like Jared, I'm on the board of Abundant Housing Massachusetts. I second his support. We strongly support this amendment. We also represent hundreds of members across the city of Boston who support making it simpler to build and renovate affordable housing. We strongly support this as a critical tool to move this housing forward quickly and efficiently, while also reducing the cost of construction. We need to use our city dollars and our public dollars more efficiently. And similarly, we need to trust the judgment of city staff and the long process that these projects go through, especially around public funding, and allow it to go forward as quickly as possible. Also, as Jared said, these projects are a public benefit in and of themselves, and I think that needs to be acknowledged more often. So again, we strongly support, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you, Molly.
Carol Streif, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. Carol, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. It's Strife, but I really don't care that much about how you pronounce it. My name is Carol Strife, and I live at 578 Mass Ave in Boston, and I'm speaking for Roxbury Voices, which is a civic organization in Roxbury. I sent a letter in earlier, and we are, excuse me, supporting very strongly the renovation, rehabilitation of public housing and existing affordable housing. We are very impressed with Kenzie Bach's presentation, both today and earlier. However, we cannot accept the fact new construction will be exempt from the Article 80 review. We believe strongly that affordable housing should be forced to comply with the same requirements that middle income housing has to comply with, that higher end housing has to comply with. We believe it's discriminatory to allow affordable housing to be built without meeting those requirements that apply to everyone else. I think personally that the process can be streamlined without taking away the Article 80 review. And I want to thank all of you for listening to me. I will be sending my letter back in again because a number of other organizations are signing on to it. So I will add their names to my letter. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carol.
Joan Seamster. Joan, go ahead.
Hi, Joan Seamster, Roxbury, member of the Highland Park Project Review Committee, and have attended every single one of the hearings on this issue. I still don't have clarity. I have to be really honest with you. College educated, doesn't matter. I've listened to everything in the comments today. Statements were made about creating needed affordable housing, not renovating, but creating. That comment was made by Josh Zakem in his testimony. Having rehabbed or expanding low-income housing was a comment made by the Abundant Housing people. They also said to incorporate and or build housing. So people who are testifying today, in addition to Chief Jameson in his closing comment at the last hearing, are all talking about new build. And yet we're being told by your group that this does not include new build and that new build would not be easily facilitated by this. Please understand, we want to do what's right by this city and affordable housing, yet how can we continue to be confused in having attended now 4 hearings? I still don't have clarity. So if we could provide clarity, and Jill, I think you asked for that, I'm telling you, we still don't have it. I'm on a text thread right now with our other neighborhood
30 seconds, Joan.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. We do not have clarity on how this will impact additional housing being built. So if we could have that in this proposal, then our concerns would go away. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Joan.
Okay, a couple of more, Mr. Chairman. Martin Beinborn. Go ahead, Martin.
Hello. Thank you for giving me the phone. My name is Martin Beinborn. I'm a Mission Hill resident. As fellow community members citywide have said, including renovation is great, but slipping in new construction to the back door at this stage is problematic. I want to reiterate first that the definition of new affordable construction, new construction, is very loose and provides a gaping legal loophole for citywide circumventing Article 80, including for buildings where 40% of the space is no housing at all. And the second point I want to make is that the BPDA is now claiming powers to determine at its discretion whether a building has no negative impact on the surrounding neighborhood without involving the community through the Article 80 process. Based on my personal observations in Mission Hill, this is a recipe for unnecessarily provoking discord instead of proactively getting the community on board. Therefore, please do not allow this insufficiently thought through so-called minor amendment, but send it back for clarification and modification. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin.
Okay, and I apologize in advance if I mispronounce your name. Intaya, please unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great, thank you. My name is Intia Ambrogi Saza. My career is in the production of nonprofit affordable housing, but I am here as a private citizen and a resident of Charlestown today. I live right up the street and can see from my window the BHA projects in Charlestown, and I've seen firsthand how long it's taken to fix up that property, much in need of repair. I do appreciate the mayor's efforts to reform and simplify the zoning code and to make affordable housing more of an opportunity in the city. And it was one of the reasons I was excited about this administration. I know there's a lot of stuff in the works right now, but so far, from what I can see, affordable housing permitting reform has essentially been a cover letter that says, read me to city staff in order to get more timely review of the extensive and often redundant city agencies. We need to codify support for preservation of projects that are mainly deed restricted affordable housing by actually making it simpler to protect these valuable community assets. It needs to be faster and more predictable for developers, owners, and the BHA to maintain affordable housing. And I think this accomplishes that. Thank you.
Thank you, Antia.
Okay, and Dolores, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. My name again is Dolores Bogdanian. I live on Park Drive in Boston, 45-year resident, and I am very much in support of affordable housing. As people have said, the lack of affordable housing in this city has really been a very sad mark on Boston and what it means for people who want to live here and want to stay here. That said, I do oppose this language that is before you. I mean, as for the reasons that have been described by others in this meeting, Caitlin's own words were, if for a large project, it wouldn't necessarily the review wouldn't be waived, but she didn't say that it wouldn't be waived for a very large project that could have adverse impacts. I would also say that if we're really talking about affordable housing, it shouldn't be at 100 AMI. It should be at least 80 AMI. $2,000 a month rent means you have to have a $96,000 income a year to be truly affordable. And that leaves out firefighters, police officers, and others whose average income is about $65,000 a year. So I don't know who this is affordable to. And I think giving unfettered discretion to the BPDA, an agency Mayor Wu said she would abolish, and to trust them, and that they would make the right decision for our city and for our communities, I think
30 seconds, Dolores.
is very misguided. And I would suggest that there needs to be much better clarity about how this will be applied and under what circumstances for this commission or anyone else to approve the text change to the zoning code. Thank you.
Thank you, Dolores.
That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Jeff. At this point, we're going to close out this portion of the hearing and we'll enter our business session. Any questions, comments from the commissioners?
I would like to comment, Mr. Chair, that I think that the depth of information analysis and thought that has been conveyed to us from the BPDA staff is superb. I think you have looked at some very challenging issues and synthesized them into reasonable to reasonable presentation materials, as well as reflecting them in these proposed amendments. And I think, Caitlin, you were very helpful when I asked to point out that if a project does have significant adverse impacts, BPDA is really based on these guidelines, unlikely to waive the Article 80 review. So I'm very comfortable with the quality of the work you have all put in, and I think it's very high quality. And I do agree with one of the speakers that at some point we have to trust our staff, and I think you all are very competent and have done a great job. So I just want to put that on the table and comment, because I thank Caitlin for answering the questions that I had. Thank you.
Thank you,
Jill. I would just echo that. I mean, I too get tired of hearing the attacks and innuendo about how the BPDA is like, just out to get neighborhoods or things like that. When I know the super talented, thoughtful, smart, civic-minded professionals that work at the BPDA have the city's best interests in mind. Now, of course, we're all not going to agree on everything. That's normal. That's just the state of affairs for all individual people. But I think to diminish the talent and experience in these people that in many cases could probably be making a lot more money somewhere else, that are doing really fantastic work across the city, is something to be proud of, that we should all be proud of as a city. So I think that's a good point, Jill. I just wanted to sort of echo on top of that. Secondly, as it relates to this specific text amendment, frankly,
I'm totally in support of it. I think it's an absolute no-brainer, and frankly, I think it probably does not go far enough yet to simplify and expedite the building of needed housing. I think we just kind of all need to get real here. We can't just say we support affordable housing and not change the mechanisms that we have that enable the actual building of affordable housing that we need as a city, which includes new housing, which includes the modernization of existing affordable housing to, support the needs and residents of the city, across the city. And again, cities need to change and grow. That's just a fact of life. Cities evolve. And Boston has to evolve, right? We have to become and continue to change and become an even greater city. And one of the main crises right now we're going through as a city is the lack of affordable housing. Frankly, lack of enough housing across all ranges, but specifically affordable housing. So I think anything we can do now to find a way to modernize, streamline, expedite the building, especially of affordable housing, is an absolute no-brainer, and I support that. And with that, I will make a motion to approve text amendment application number 518, waiver of affordable housing, Article 80.
Nelson, did you? I'm sorry, Nelson. I saw somebody raise their hand. Drew, all right, go ahead.
No,
we can speak on. We can speak on the motion.
I was just trying to second it. Sorry.
Oh yeah.
Somebody wanted. I think somebody else wanted to speak when Michael jumped in. No. Okay. There's a motion on the floor. Is it seconded?
Yeah.
It's motion and second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. We'll go to a roll call vote. Jill Hatton,
Yes.
Michael Nichols,
Yes.
Michael DeMella,
Yes.
Nelson Arroyo,
Yes.
David Marr,
Yes.
Drew Leff,
Yes.
Aisha Miller,
Yes.
Midori Morikawa,
Yes.
Ricardo Ostrich,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Jay Hurley, 10-0. Thank you. Good luck. Does anybody need a break before we start this last meeting?
Nope.
Hearing none, I'm gonna begin the meeting.
Chairman, how much longer do we have? You keep on saying this in an ominous way, like a half hour more, right? I can.
Wow, I can never tell you, Ricardo, because it could be 10 minutes and it could be 2 hours. So,
Okay.
I mean, we got enough. If someone has other things, we have enough commissioners here to get it done, I believe.
All right.
We
we're
got
good.
something to do. All right. This is the 9:45 public hearing at 11:01. This is a hearing before the Boston Zoning Commission to consider a petition for the First Amendment to the development plan for Plan Development Area Number 100, Parcel 25/25B in Mission Hill. The hearing was duly advertised December 21st, 2023 in the Boston Herald. In the Boston Zoning Commission hearing on petitions, the proponent will first present their case and the subject questioning by members of the commission only. We are taking support and opposition at the same time. If you plan to testify, please take the time to verify that your computer microphone is active. Please I'm sorry. Click the hand icon on your Zoom control panel. This will signal staff that you'd like to speak. When your hand is raised, your hand icon will be blue. If you're calling into a meeting and like to testify, please dial *9 to raise your hand. When I call for public testimony, a member of the staff will announce your name and allow you to speak. You must unmute your microphone. Your webcam will not be active. Please give your full name, any group affiliation, announce whether you support or oppose the petition. Each speaker will be allowed up to 2 minutes. If necessary, I will advise you when you have 30 seconds remaining. At that time, please summarize your remarks so the meeting can continue and others may be heard. Finally, the proponents are allowed a brief 5 to 10 minute periods rebuttal if they so desire. Please begin the presentation. Thank you for your patience.
Good morning, and thank you, commissioners. My name is Ebony DeRosa, and I am a senior project manager in the Development Review Department of the BPDA. We are here before you today to discuss the proposed First Amendment to the Development Plan for Planned Development Area Number 100, Parcel 25/Parcel 25B, and the Parcel 25 Phase 3 Notice of Project Change Project. I thank you for your time today. The proposed Notice of Project Change consists of the construction of a new 6-story, approximately 120,000 gross square foot building with up to 94 affordable rental units and 33 parking spaces, 8 of which are for the sole use of the proposed project residents, and the remaining 25 spaces as ancillary parking for the adjacent Phase 1A project. The proposed project amends the original Phase 3 project, which consisted of approximately 161,500 gross square feet of commercial office space, which was anticipated to be 160 feet tall and included 185 below-grade parking spaces. The notice of project change and PDA amendment were both filed on September 22nd of 2023. A public meeting was held in October, which resulted in an overwhelming amount of support for the project from the greater Mission Hill community and Councilor Durkin. At this time, I am happy to turn it over to Ford Delvecchio from the planning team to discuss the planning context for the project, followed by a presentation from the development team. Thank you.
Good morning, commissioners. My name is Ford Delvecchio, and I'm the BPDA zoning compliance reviewer assigned to this project. Can I get the next slide, please? BPDA planners use the zoning, citywide plans and policies, local context, including present density and recent construction, as well as community feedback in order to review the proposed project during the review process. This project is located in Roxbury Crossing on the border of Mission Hill and Roxbury. There is currently no applicable neighborhood plan for this parcel. The proposed project is located in an area supplied heavily by public transit, with many amenities needed for daily life located nearby. Directly across the street from the property is the Roxbury Crossing MBTA Orange Line stop, as well as stops for the 18 and 22 buses. The buildings surrounding the proposed project are a combination of commercial, retail, mixed use, and multifamily housing. This is especially true as one continues west along Tremont Street. The bridge that spans the MBTA tracks immediately to the east of the development site is underdeveloped with no air rights projects, which provides for a sharp break between Mission Hill, where the property is formerly housed, and the adjacent neighborhood of Roxbury. This project also falls within Parks Design Review, which calls for heightened importance upon open and green space preservation and enhancement. Based on these resources, there is a problem with the slides. This parcel is governed by PDA number 100, which was created as an overlay in order to create consistency and reliability for the zoning that defines the property. The proposed NPC still falls within the parameters set forth by the original PDA. Thank you, and now I will turn it over to the development team to present the project in more detail.
Thank you, Ford.
Jade, before you do that, Councilor Durkin has her hand raised. I'd like to take her out of order if possible.
All right, we can't see anything. Go ahead, Councilor.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
No problem.
I'm the district counselor for District 8 and for Mission Hill. I'm really proud to speak in support of this project today. As a district counselor for Mission Hill, I'm cognizant for the need for extremely low and moderate income housing for families and individuals. This project has done everything they can to work with the community. They have reached a level of support in the community that is something I haven't seen from other projects. And I'm really pleased to see this proposal brought forward by a steadfast partner and leader in the neighborhood, Mission Hill Neighborhood Housing Services. They are committed to helping Mission Hill retain its cultural, racial, and economic diversity. And to do that, additional workforce housing is needed. So my office and I have been working to support this project every step of the way. And I would be proud if you all vote to support it today. So I sent my full letter this morning in support. So, but just wanted to speak today in support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commission members. Attorney Nick Zazula will just jump into the presentation. McDermott, Quilty, Miller and Hanley, LLP, zoning and permitting attorney for the project. We want to thank Ebony, Ford, Councilor Durkin as well.
You got somewhere to put that?
Comments here this morning to get us started. I also just want to quickly introduce our team. I know it's been a very long morning already. With me today from Mission Hill Neighborhood Housing Services is Patricia Flaherty, their executive director, and Ricardo Sanchez, who is their senior project manager. We also have our project architect from UTIL, Nick Bierens. Very honored and excited to be here with you this morning for this wonderful project. We want to thank just very quickly, a few folks, because it's taken a long time to get here. And it's important to thank people for all their time, effort, and support to get to this point. All the individual Mission Hill community stakeholders participated in a lengthy community planning process for this overall parcel 25 that really resulted in the vision that Neighborhood Housing Services is completing with this phase 3, and those who supported our recent funding application as well to MOH, including Sociedad Latina, Community Alliance of Mission Hill, Roxbury Tenants of Harvard, and Mission Hill Community Center, Mission Tobin Community Center. We also had support from our institutional community, Wentworth, New Baptist Hospital, Children's Hospital, and Metro Housing Boston. And you just heard from one of our elected officials, but we've also had great support from Congresswoman Presley, Councilor Durkin, our district city councilor, at-large Councilor Erin Murphy, now Council President Rosine Lujan, and state reps China Tyler and Sam Montana. Briefly, this slide has been up for a while, so I think you've all had a chance to read it. But this notice of project change is for the 3rd phase only of this overall PDA project. I'm happy to report back to the commission that the first 2 phases of the overall project have been fully constructed and built out. In fact, Neighborhood Housing Services just obtained their certificate of occupancy from ISD for the phase 2 part of this project. And what you'll see here is, again, a summary of the overall project. I don't need to go line by line, but what this new 3rd phase has done, and as Ebony has stated at the beginning, is we're changing from a commercial office building to an all affordable housing. As we've seen with the pandemic and COVID, mobile work in office space is just not as needed as it was maybe 5 years ago or even 3 years ago. But what is still needed, and what you've heard throughout today's hearings, that affordable housing is very important and needed in the city of Boston. So we're happy to go after some of those presentations that you just heard to say that this new NPC phase 3 will actually include 94 affordable housing units at a range of area median incomes, including 24 1-bed units, 55 2-bed units, and 15 3-bed units. So a massive program change and a much needed program change from a commercial office building into an affordable, all affordable housing building. I'm going to toss it over now to Nick Burens to go through the rest of the presentation. Happy to go back to this slide, Mr. Chair and Commissioners, if you have any questions, but in the interest of time, we'll just move forward. And Nick, why don't you go through the rest of the presentation? Thank you.
Great, thank you, Nick, and thank you for the commissioners for having us this morning. So the project sits directly adjacent to the Orange Line right-of-way and the Southwest Corridor Park, as you can see here, and across the street from the Roxbury Crossing T Station. The site really serves as a gateway to the Mission Hill neighborhood, and it's an important pedestrian connector for residents of many of the surrounding communities. The preceding phases, as Nick mentioned, had provided 86 units of affordable housing to the neighborhood, as well as commercial and community spaces at street level. You can see here the completed phase 1 project on the left, as well as the recently completed phase 2 building on the upper right. The proposed project will integrate many of the temporary improvements between the preceding projects and provide welcoming pedestrian connections and landscape areas throughout the site. Phase 3 will bring an additional 94 units of 100% affordable housing in the neighborhood and fill an important missing gap in the neighborhood fabric. The project has been designed architecturally to be equally responsive, both to the active transit corridor at its front door and the city beyond, but also to its immediate neighbors and the surroundings within the parcel 25 block itself. The massing, materiality, and color around the building have all been considered to further these goals. The landscape plays a very important role in stitching together the individual projects into a cohesive whole. We've designed these spaces in coordination with our landscape architect to create clear, safe, and accessible pathways for people to circulate through the site, while also providing a variety of places for informal gathering and more structured community events within the site itself. The ground floor of the building accommodates a generous community room facing towards Tremont Street and the ample lobby and bike parking, as well as vehicle parking in an enclosed parking area at grade. The upper floors are arranged efficiently to maximize livable area for all of the residential units and provide daylight to corridors and elevator lobbies. Here you can see a view of the project from the plaza directly in front of the Roxbury Crossing T station at the intersection of Tremont and Columbus, with a long pleated facade facing the train tracks. Making your way down Tremont and across the street, the ground floor of the building is pulled back to open the community room to the street and invite pedestrians into the site. From Gurney Street on the left and Mendora Street on the right, the landscape paths invite neighbors into the site and provide direct access to the building's residential entrance. The building entrance itself is located on a plaza at the nexus of the three projects, with a prominent position and clear views to and from the surrounding neighborhood and transit connections. We've designed the building and the landscape as interconnected, active social spaces meant to invite connection and serve as a beacon to residents and neighbors throughout the day. And this view of the muse between phases 2 and 3 shows that intention extends to all parts of the site design, where we've aimed to create a balance between active public uses and private residential character, providing spaces that are both welcoming and inclusive and give residents a sense of home. We're very excited about the opportunity to bring more affordable, sustainable housing to Mission Hill and fulfill a longstanding community vision for this site. And I'll open it up to questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, comments? Commissioners? Will you take the presentation down, please?
Yes.
Thank you. Sorry about all the noise in the background here. We just,
I have 0 raised hands, Mr. Chairman.
okay. I'm on any questions from the commissioners? But we can cut to the chase. There's no public testimony. So at this
There is a
point,
bit. It looks like there's a couple raised hands.
okay, let's we can get back to the commissioners during our business session. Let's do the public testimony, Jeff.
All right, Samantha Montano, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Sorry for the background noise in my area. I'm Samantha Montano. I'm the state representative for this district, and I'm just coming to say I fully support this project. Looking forward to getting more affordable units in this district and making sure that we are allowing folks to live in Mission Hill who aren't just students, they're folks. So thank you, and just voicing my support.
Thank you.
Looks like there's one more. It's in the group with us.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. My name is Henry Santana, the newly elected at-large city councilor for Boston. I just wanted to come out here and in support of this project. Think that we definitely need more affordable housing across the city, and that will be my statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. No more public testimony, Jeff?
No, one more. Adam Sabra, go ahead.
Okay, Adam.
Mute. Good morning, members of the board. Adam Sarbaugh, Mission Hill resident, 9 Oswald Street, speaking in support of parcel 25 and everything that NHS has put forward. I also agree and wanted to echo Nick's comments earlier in the hearing for the detail that goes beyond this board, but also everyone that put the energy and the timeless effort into speeding this process up to get it to the board. It is a delay and a hard process to get to, and while this is an achievement to be honored to be at this board hearing or the commission hearing, it's not without the efforts of everyone to be at this stage. So thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Jeff, that phone?
That is it.
Okay. At this point, we're going to close out this portion of the hearing and enter our business session. Any questions, comments from the commissioners?
Just a brief comment. I just wanted to be on the record in support of this project. Pat Flaherty and Mission Hill Neighborhood Housing Services just does an incredible job for that neighborhood, and this is an incredibly well-considered proposal.
Thank you, Michael.
I also wanted to comment that I thought the materials were very thorough and So I didn't have any questions, which is rare. Thank you, guys. I thought they did a very good job.
Motions, do you have any motions?
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chair,
Okay.
to approve First Amendment to Development Plan for Plan Development Area Number 100, Parcel 25 / Parcel 25B, Mission Hill.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call. Jill Hatton,
Yes.
Michael Nichols,
Yes.
Michael DeMella,
Yes.
Nelson Arroyo,
Yes.
David Marr. David,
Yes.
Drew Leff,
Yes.
Aisha Miller,
Yes.
Midori Morikawa,
Yes.
Ricardo Ostrich. Ricardo,
Yes.
okay, thank you. And Jay Hurley, I vote yes. It's 10-0. Congratulations, good luck.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
What do we got, Jeff? Next meeting? We got any other business?
Next meeting is next week. Got 3 PDAs coming before you. One in Dorchester on Morrissey Boulevard. One is the Old Colony Housing Development in Southie. And one is on 415 Newbury Street in the Back Bay. So 3 PDAs.
Jeff, I think you said because I hadn't seen the material yet. I think you said you were waiting until after this hearing today, right?
Yeah, because I didn't want to throw all that at you. You'll get it probably later on today, but I didn't want to just overload you with info.
Thank you,
Okay.
Jeff.
So any questions? Anything for
No.
me?
We all set? Thank you for your patience. See you next week.
All right. See you next
See
week.
everybody next week.
Thank you.
Alrighty. Take
Bye-bye.
care.
Bye.